We'd been friends since college,
I
the
just,
kind of friendship built on
I
shared
don't know how to
apartments,
feel about all
unpaid
this.
bills, cheap coffee
I
at
just feel
2
so
a.m.,
overwhelmed
and
with
knowing
everything
when not
lately.
to ask
It's like I'm carrying
questions.
the weight of the world on my
When he
shoulder.
texted, "Can you check on my mom?"
I just don't know what to do
She's
anymore.
been
It's
off.
all so
I
overwhelming.
can't leave work. I grabbed my keys without hesitation. His mom, Evelyn, had always been polite, reserved, and quietly strong. The kind of woman who smiled with her eyes more than her mouth. She lost her husband years ago, Ryan's dad, and since then, something in her had folded inward. Not broken. Just, quieter. The drive to her house felt longer than usual. The sky was heavy, low clouds pressing down like a held breath. Streetlights flickered on too early, and a strange unease crept into my chest. I told myself I was imagining things. I always did that when silence felt too loud. Her house stood at the end of the block, unchanged, white siding, porch light glowing warm against the dusk. Ryan's childhood home. I parked, took a breath, and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. Then I heard movement. Slow. Careful. The door opened just a few inches. And then, she looked at me. Evelyn stood there barefoot, wrapped in a cardigan that looked too big for her, like she'd grabbed the first thing she could find. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders in a way I'd never seen before. Her eyes met mine, and something in them made my throat tighten. Relief. Fear. Loneliness. All at once. "Oh," she whispered. "You came." "Ryan asked me to check on you," I said gently. "He was worried." She hesitated, fingers tightening around the doorframe. Then she opened the door wider and stepped aside. "Please," she said quietly. "Come in." The house smelled faintly. Of chamomile tea and old memories. Everything was exactly where it had always been, framed photos, neatly folded blankets, the clock ticking in the hallway. But something felt off. Like the house was holding its breath. She closed the door behind me and leaned against it for a second, eyes shut. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "I will be. I just didn't want to be alone." The way she said it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't pleading. It was honest. We sat in the living room, the TV muted, the glow casting soft shadows on the walls. She wrapped both hands around her mug like it was the only warm thing left in the world. "He worries too much," she said, attempting a smile. "That's what sons do." She laughed softly, then fell silent again. The clock ticked louder. Each second stretched. "I've been having trouble sleeping," she admitted. "The nights feel longer lately." I nodded, unsure what to say. Then she looked at me. Really looked at me. "You don't have to stay," she said. I was already shaking my head. "It's fine. I've got nowhere to be." She swallowed. Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "Would you stay tonight?" The room seemed to tilt. "I mean," she added quickly, just here. "So the house doesn't feel so empty." Every instinct in me screamed that this moment mattered. That whatever I said would echo long after tonight. "Of course," I said. "I can stay." Her shoulders sagged with relief. She let out a breath she'd clearly been holding for days. "Thank you," she said. "You don't know how much that means." As the evening stretched on, we talked, about nothing and everything. Ryan as a child. Her garden that never quite grew right. My job. My plans. The way time slips through your fingers when you're not paying attention. At one point, the power flickered. The lights went out. She gasped softly, standing too quickly. "It's okay," I said. "Probably just the storm." But she didn't sit back down. She stood there, frozen, her hands clenched at her sides. "I hate the dark," she admitted. I moved closer without thinking. Not touching. Just close enough. "You're not alone," I said. That's when she looked up at me, and said the words that changed everything. "Please," she whispered. "Don't leave me alone tonight." Not as a request. As a confession. The silence that followed was heavy. Fragile. The kind that breaks if you breathe wrong. Somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't just about fear of the dark. It was about grief. Absence at a house that had heard too many echoes. I nodded slowly. "I won't," I said. And the moment I said it, I knew, nothing would ever feel simple again. Night settles differently when you know you're not supposed to be there. The storm outside grew louder, rain tapping against the windows like restless fingers, wind pushing against the walls as if testing their strength. Evelyn moved through the house turning on lamps, soft pools of light chasing away the shadows. I followed her into the kitchen, aware of every step, every breath, every unspoken thought hanging between us. "I'll make up the guest room," I offered. She paused, her back to me. "It's already made," she said. "Ryan keeps it ready. Just in case." The way she said his name carried both pride and pain. She poured herself another cup of tea, her hands trembling slightly this time. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. "You don't have to pretend you're okay," I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and something inside her finally cracked. "I'm so tired of being strong," she whispered. Those words hit harder than any confession could have. She sat at the table, shoulders slumping, years of loneliness pressing down all at once. I pulled out the chair across from her but didn't sit. I knelt instead, lowering myself to her level. "You don't have to be tonight." Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. She reached out, hesitated, then rested her hand lightly on my arm. The touch was brief. Careful. But it sent a strange, electric awareness through me. "Thank you for staying," she said again, like she needed to remind herself it was real. Later, the power returned, but neither of us moved to turn off the lamps. The house felt warmer now, not happier, just less empty. She showed me where I could sleep, standing awkwardly in the doorway like she wasn't sure how to leave. "Good night," she said softly. "Good night, Evelyn." I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening. To the house breathe. Minutes passed. Then hours. Sleep refused to come. Then I heard it. A quiet sound. A sob, quickly stifled. I sat up. "Evelyn." I called gently. No answer. I followed the sound to the hallway, then to her bedroom door, which was cracked open just enough for light to spill through. I knocked lightly. "It's me," I said. "Are you okay?" Silence. Then, "I don't want to be alone." I opened the door slowly. She sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking, face buried in her hands. The room was filled with memories, framed photos, folded clothes, the unmistakable absence of someone who used to be there. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, looking up. "I didn't mean to." "You don't have to apologize," I said. She looked at me like she was afraid I'd disappear if she blinked. "Just sit," she said. "Please." I sat on the chair nearby. Not the bed. Not crossing lines. But close enough that she could see I wasn't leaving. "I keep thinking I hear him," she confessed. "His footsteps. His breathing. And then I remember, and it feels like losing him all over again." Her voice broke. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't give advice. I just listened. At some point, without either of us deciding it, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against my shoulder. I froze, then relaxed when she sighed, the tension draining from her body. "You're safe," I said. The words felt right. She stayed like that for a long time. When she finally pulled back, her eyes met mine, closer than before. Too close. A line hovered between us, thin as glass. "I don't know what I'd do without you tonight," she said. Something about the way she said it made my chest tighten. "You won't have to," I replied. She hesitated. Then she lay back against the pillows. "Will you stay here?" she asked quietly. "Just until I fall asleep." Every instinct warned me this was dangerous. Every other instinct told me leaving would hurt her more than staying. "I'll sit," I said. She nodded. Minutes passed. Her breathing slowed. The storm softened. I thought she'd fallen asleep when she spoke again, barely audible. "You're a good man." The words stayed with me long after her eyes closed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat there, listening to the rain, wondering how comfort could feel so heavy, and how something so innocent could feel like the edge of a cliff. When morning finally came, sunlight spilled through the curtains, gentle and unforgiving. Evelyn stirred, blinking awake. For a second, confusion crossed her face. Then memory returned. She sat up quickly. I'm sorry if I." "It's okay," I said, standing. "You needed someone." She nodded, but something had changed. The air between us was different now, careful, fragile. "I should go," I added. "Ryan will probably check in." She walked me to the door. When I reached for the handle, she spoke. "Will you come back?" she asked. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Just, ever." I turned to her. "I'm here if you need me." She smiled, small, grateful, and painfully complicated. As I stepped outside, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. That night wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning that I tried to convince myself the feeling would fade. The kind of feeling that lingers after you walk away from a house that no longer feels like just a house. The kind that follows you through traffic lights, grocery aisles, late-night silence. I told myself it was nothing more than concern. Compassion. Human decency. But my phone buzzed later that evening. "Evelyn, thank you again. I slept better than I have in months." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. I'm glad. That's all that matters." A pause. Then another message. "Evelyn, Ryan's lucky to have you as a friend." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Days passed. Then a week. Ryan called like everything was normal, work stress, jokes, plans for the weekend. He sounded relieved that his mom was doing better, and every time he said it, something tightened inside me. Because I knew why she was doing better. And I didn't know what that made me. Then one evening, the rain came again. And with it, another message. Evelyn, I don't want to bother you, but could you stop by? Just for a few minutes. I stood there, keys in hand, staring at my door. A few minutes turned into a decision. Her porch light was on when I arrived, glowing like a quiet signal. She opened the door almost immediately, like she'd been standing there waiting. You came, she said softly. I said I would. She stepped aside, letting me in, the familiar scent of tea and lavender wrapping around me. This time, she looked calmer. Stronger. But her eyes still carried that same quiet storm. I didn't want to call Ryan, she admitted as we Saturday, he worries too much. And I didn't want him to think I was falling apart again. You're allowed to have bad days, I said. She smiled faintly. I forget that sometimes. We talked. Again. About ordinary things. The weather. A show she'd started watching. A recipe she wanted to try. But beneath every word was the awareness of what had already happened between us, not something physical, but something felt. At one point, she stood to refill our cups and suddenly stopped. I almost told him, she said quietly. Told him what? That night, how scared I was. How you stayed. My chest tightened. And I didn't, she said. It felt like it was just ours. The word ours landed heavier than it should have. She turned to face me, leaning against the counter. For the first time, she didn't look away when our eyes met. I don't want to replace anyone, she said. And I don't want to confuse you. I just feel less invisible when you're here. I should have stepped back. I didn't. You're not invisible, I said. You never were. Silence stretched between us. Then she laughed softly, shaking her head. This is dangerous, she said. Yes, I agreed. And still, neither of us moved. When I left that night, she didn't ask me to stay. She didn't need to. The question was already hanging between us, unanswered. Ryan called the next day. Hey man, he said. Mom says you've been checking in on her. Thanks for that. Of course, I replied, forcing my voice steady. She seems lighter. Happier. I swallowed. I'm glad. There was a pause on the line. You're a good guy, Ryan said. I don't know what I'd do without you. After the call ended, I sat there in silence. Because now it wasn't just about Evelyn. It was about loyalty. Truth. And how long a secret can live before it demands a cost. That night, I didn't get a message. But I couldn't sleep. And I knew, deep down, the next choice I made would change all three of our lives. If this chapter made your chest tighten. If you feel the consequences closing in. Subscribe now, because Chapter 4 brings confrontation, temptation, and a moment where everything could fall apart.